Okay, so as some of you may know, at ruggedoptimist.com, we did launch this forum allowing for people to submit anonymous one off questions that would get answered in a video like this. And we've started getting questions, so I better start giving answers. Okay, so the first question that was received through the forum was from a curious1. And curious1 says, "We originally met outside of professional life, but I wanted to try this out. I just need to ask my Abuna, but I wanted to hear your thoughts. So if we don't eat meat during Lent, is it okay to eat plant based meat?" So, curious1, I want to thank you. Yours was the first question that was received through the Ask Anything forum at ruggedoptimist.com, where truly any question can be asked and submitted anonymously. And I'm glad that you said you're going to reach out to your Abuna about this, because at the end of the day, I am not a theologian, I'm not a spiritual advisor, I'm just a goober who knows stuff, but I'm glad to address this question using Rugged Optimist principles. Okay is a very broad and subjective question, so I want to be very clear on the question that I am answering. I think you're asking if we're abstaining from meat during Lent, does it break your meat fast to eat plant-based meat? So I'll start by getting the really boring and obvious elephant out of the room, right? If the question is just, am I eating meat if I eat plant-based meat? Then no, of course not. And you can stop the video right now and not have anything to think about. But a more genuine answer to your question would require looking at why the early church instituted a meat fast in the first place. Meat was considered a little more indulgent, it was a little more decadent, and it was definitely more expensive. The choice to abstain from meat wasn't primarily focused on an ethical or health question. It was about turning from a worldly pleasure to refocus on practices of mindfulness, self-discipline, and spiritual growth. They could take the extra money that they saved and give it to the poor. Looking at this question in a very different context, there was a company focusing on team building that required its leaders to have different events on the calendar. That the events that the company chose were great and the level of participation was great as well, but they were not getting uniform results. They hadn't really defined standards for what needed to be present in all instances of these events to ensure that they were actually creating situations where team members relied on each other and built up a sense of mutual trust and psychological safety. Well, a team happy hour can be great for these purposes, but you don't really defeat cliquishness if everybody can show up, group up, and then go to different places in the space and never interact with each other. The source of the problem became obvious when we applied one of the Rugged Optimist trainings that helps professionals distinguish between how something looks and what something is in different situations. And I know how that can seem really simple, but I have seen firsthand how the inability to apply it is at the root of missed opportunities and getting blindsided. And I grew up in Texas. I really liked meat, but at age 16, I made a conscious choice that I wasn't going to eat it anymore. At 18, I cut out milk and I cut out eggs. Now, when I'm in my 30s, I have no active desire for any of these things whatsoever. Would I be fulfilling a Lenten meat fast if I just kept existing as I did every day? If I was to break it down using one of our trainings, I would say no, I'm not, because in this situation, I'm only achieving what it looks like. I'm not achieving what it is. It's a common mistake I do see that people inadvertently switch these things. But back to your situation, I know that your question came in at a time that Lent had already begun, so I imagine that you're asking the question in regards to a change that you are considering making. And don't get me wrong, I get it. As somebody that experienced plant-based meat in the early 2000s, I can tell you it's a radically different situation now. My dad ordered an impossible breakfast sandwich for 2 months straight before he finally asked, "I wonder what makes it impossible?" So in conclusion, I would say no, it's not breaking your Lenten meat fast, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have an effect on it. So my only recommendation for your decision making is that you think about what we discussed regarding how it looks versus what it is, so that you have a full understanding of the impact on the situation and can be empowered in whichever choice that you make. Oh, hey, curious one. Speaking of Lent, if you have not handled your almsgiving yet, you could always buy me a coffee. I mean, no pressure. I'm just looking out for you, but it'd be really great. Very much needed. Thank you.